What's up, everybody? Welcome to WordyGirl Entertainment. And this is WordyGirl Watching, where I not only review TV shows and movies, but I break down the storytelling behind them. Now, I am a TV and film producer and also a screenwriter. So that gives me a different approach to these TV and film reviews that you may be used to seeing. The show I'm reviewing now is Lioness, starring Zoe Saldana. And the reason why I'm reviewing this show is because it is my favorite show on television right now. And I love this show because I am a spy film and TV junkie. If it has a spy in it, I'm in. I love anything CIA, special ops, FBI, whatever. If it's a acronym, I'm loving it, okay? Now, in reviewing this show, I hope this video doesn't get flagged by YouTube because I'm going to be saying a lot of stuff that's military related and foreign policy related. So, who's ever out there listening, whatever agency is listening, please don't come after me. I know nothing about nothing. I'm just a TV and film producer reviewing a show that I love, okay? We are just regular African students. Now, that's a line from a movie. If you know which movie that is, put it down in the comments. Now, like I said, the show I'm reviewing is Lioness Season 3 premiere episode. And if you are not familiar with Lioness, it's basically a spy/action show. And it's about this woman CIA agent named Jo, and that's played by Zoe Saldana. And she runs a special ops unit using female soldiers to go undercover and get the target that they're looking for. And that allows Jo and her team to come in and do their business and kidnap them or kill them or whatever they need to do. So, yeah. So Zoe Saldana is the lead, and she plays Jo, like I said. And it also stars Nicole Kidman. She plays Caitlin Meade, and she's a CIA higher up. And her title is Clandestine Service Senior Supervisor. Say that 3 times in a row. Basically, she's Jo's boss. It also stars Morgan Freeman, who plays Edwin Mullins, and he's the Secretary of State for the United States. It has an amazing supporting cast, so if you want to know their names and positions, check out the little graphic I made. Now, let me warn you, this review contains spoilers. So if you haven't seen the episode, go back and watch it before you watch this review because I'm holding nothing back, okay? Now, here's what fascinated me. Everybody online is talking about the explosions, the drones, and the dogs. But as a screenwriter, I don't think that's what the episode was really about. I think Taylor Sheridan is telling us a story about information. Who has it? Who doesn't? And what happens to the people carrying out the mission realize that they're being kept in the dark. Because by the end of the episode, I found myself asking one question. Is Jo really running this mission, or is she just being used as a lioness by someone higher up? Now, one of my favorite storytelling decisions happens before anyone even fires a shot. We open on Jo lifting weights in her garage. She's lifting weights, she's doing squats, she's doing push-ups, the whole gamut. She's preparing for who knows what. And then we see her at home with her husband. They're laughing and flirting and having a little sexy time in the shower, And then they're helping the kids with the homework while the husband makes the breakfast. Everybody's happy and in a good mood because Jo has been home for a while working a regular 9-to-5 schedule. She hasn't been overseas for months at a time. So for a few minutes, everything feels normal. And that's not a filler, that's storytelling. Taylor Sheridan is reminding us what Jo is fighting to protect, her family. Because if the episode started in the Ukraine with the drones and the explosives and the dogs, everybody would just be like, cool scene. Instead, Taylor Sheridan gives us peace first, and then he rips it away. That's how you create emotional contrast. As a writer, we all think about giving the audience time to breathe before we put them under pressure. And Taylor Sheridan understands that because he's a great writer. Seeing the family having breakfast before we see the Ukraine battle scene reminds us of what Jo has at stake if she fails this mission. We see what she has to lose. She could die and her family would never see her again, and that would devastate them. That makes us feel scared for Jo when we see those drones and the enemy firing on them. The battle scene stresses us out, but we want more. One of the smartest scenes in this episode isn't in Ukraine. It's breakfast. Not Joe's breakfast, Caitlyn's. She's sitting there with her husband discussing world events, democracy, China, foreign policy, the works. But notice something. They're never really saying what they're talking about. They're speaking in code and hypotheticals and metaphors. I absolutely love that because that's how two people who are in secret agencies would probably speak to each other. They're married and they trust each other, but they know there are lines they cannot cross. And as they're having breakfast and talking, Caitlyn gets a call from Joe, and they're going over some things when suddenly Joe gets blackjacked, which is she's being taken down and kidnapped. We see two cars box her in and crash into her and snatch her out of the car. She yells the blackjack thing so that Caitlyn can know what's happening to her. And Caitlyn springs into action. She jumps up from the table where she's having breakfast with her husband, and she goes to work. She makes a call to bring in people to go find out what has happened to Joe. But what I love most about this scene is that her husband, he doesn't react to what's going on. Why? Because he's used to it. They do this whole secret operative agency stuff together. They've been doing it for years. They're used to each other. So he just looks at her walking away and he's like, oh, okay, baby, go handle your business. See you for dinner. So one minute Caitlyn is having breakfast, the next she's running a national security operation. And I love that moment because it tells us everything we need to know about the relationship without anybody explaining it. Now that's character writing. Now we jump back 6 months. Joe meets with a double agent in the park to give her some type of information. But first we just think Joe is doing a run through the park, getting her exercise in. But that's not really what's happening. We realize that her whole team is there and they're spread out in various areas of the park, but still surrounding her, and they're all dressed like they're out for a run too. I love details like that. Nothing flashy, no music, just pure action. The double agent gives Joe the name of a Russian spy, but here's the interesting part. They don't even know exactly what information this spy has. They just know they want it. And that made me think someone higher up knows more than Joe. And that is where the mystery begins. Now let's talk about Ukraine. At first, I didn't know what was going on with this part of the story. Because sometimes the dialogue is so heavy with tech talk, with shop talk about the military that I get lost sometimes. And I'm like, what are they talking about? I have no clue. So this time I paid close attention. I even had to watch it a couple of times to really understand what was going on with this scene. I even had to look up some of the military acronyms that they use, like PID. I was like, what does PID mean? And it means personal identification. Somebody said Joe is the CIA and she needs to PID. I'm like, what? So when I looked it up, I was like, oh, okay. Okay, so that made me understand what was really going on. Now, this is the big scene of the episode. But because I didn't understand it the first time I looked at it, I thought they were doing a training mission before they go out and do the real thing. So as they're running to the field, a bunch of drones pop up, but the drones aren't attacking them. And so that made me think, oh, well, this is just training because there's no explosions, coming at them. But come to find out, no, this is the real thing. They're already in the thick of it. And what they're doing is they're coming into the battlefield area in Ukraine so that they can meet up with their team that's already there. But they have to fight their way in. So their team sends out the drones that are actually going over to the enemy lines. So this ain't no practice run. If the enemy fires back, people are gonna die. So this entire sequence is insane, intense. We've got the drone warfare, we've got the bunker, we've got the dogs, explosions everywhere. But underneath that action is something much more important. So Joe and her team finally make it to the bunker, and they're getting a briefing by the army team. And that's when Joe figures out that something is not right. She's not getting all the information she normally gets. She's operating in the blind, and she's not comfortable with that because she's never in the blind. And the army leader gives her and her team a brief about what's going to happen when they go and try to cross enemy lines and get the Russian spy. She and her team find out that the army doesn't want her team to cross over enemy lines with her, and they don't like that. And that's when Jo realizes something is going on here. She's operating in the blind, and she doesn't know why. And she's not used to operating in the blind. She's the lady who leads the operation. The army guys tell Jo that her team can't support her on this mission because they are not trained for war. They're trained for extractions. And this is real war. This is the war with Ukraine and Russia. And so they're not trained for it. So they're not going to let them go in and protect her. The army guys will provide that protection because they are trained for war. And Jo pushes back and she's like, no, I got to have somebody from my team with me. So they picked Cruz because Cruz came from the army. Remember in the first episode, she was running from her boyfriend and she unknowingly ran into that army recruitment office. And the officer there saved her from getting, beat up by her boyfriend. And she realized she didn't have any other options. So she joined up with the army. Now, this is where we see that Jo is losing control of this mission. Other people are making decisions, other people are giving orders, and they are withholding information. And she is not used to that. Jo has always been the one in control, but not this time. Sorry, Jo. One thing Taylor Sheridan does well is write competent people. Nobody gives long speeches. Nobody explains military tactics to the audience. Nobody stops in the middle of the action and explain anything to the audience. Everybody just does their job. And I love that. And as a producer, I appreciate writers who trust their audience. Taylor trusts us to keep up, and that's refreshing. But I don't always keep up. Like I said, I had to look up the military acronyms to understand what was really going on. But that's great writing. And for you writers out there, understand that you should not be spelling things out for your audience. Trust them to understand what you're talking about. Make them feel a part of the story by figuring things out on their own. I read a lot of scripts where new writers are explaining things. They're telling the audience what is going on when we should be looking at the actors show what's going on, not telling us what's going on. The audience isn't stupid. They'll get it. And if not, make them work for it. Trust me, they'll enjoy the show even more. As a viewer myself, I love figuring out a mystery or a complicated situation. It makes me feel smart. It makes me feel like, yeah, I figured that out. I got one over on the writers. No, you didn't. They know what they're doing. Now, can we talk about those military dogs for a second? Oh my God, they were vicious. They were serious. I was like, oh my God, I am scared of those dogs, and I ain't even in that scene. Watching them attack the enemy was brutal. I mean, those dogs were chomping on those men like they haven't eaten in 20 years. I'm like, oh my God. But what hit me wasn't the action of the dogs. It was what happened afterwards. When the dogs were attacking the enemies, one of the enemies stabbed the dog to get him off of him. And he basically ended up killing the dog. But they picked the dog up and took him back to the bunker with them when they left. And when they got there, the trainer guy who's in charge of the dogs, he was pissed. He was sad, and he was, just grieving over the dog. He was grieving hard. That was his buddy. He completely lost it. He started cussing and throwing things and stomping around. It was really sad. And that scene reminded me of something very important. Those soldiers don't just lose people. They lose partners. They lose family. They lose companions. And then Cody walks over to the trainer guy and tells him, brother, you got to get her ready for travel. And he's talking about the dog. Even though she's dead, you got to pick her up and get her ready so she can roll out when we roll out, And the dog trainer was pissed. He was like, those motherfuckers. And Cody was like, you got to get her ready. And that was my favorite line of dialogue in the whole episode, because underneath those few words, there was a whole lot going on. A lot that was not said, but understood. So basically, Cody was saying, I know you're hurting. I know you're angry, but the mission isn't over. Feel later, move now. Now that's military life in one sparsely worded conversation. Now Joe and Cruz are spent after that battle. They need to take a moment for themselves, so they go out into the hallway to catch a breath and recoup. And Joe tells Cruz that she can't believe they just killed a bunch of people for a chess piece in a war that the United States is not even a part of. And that stopped me, because Joe is finally questioning the mission itself. Not how to complete it, but whether it should have even started to begin with. And that's serious for Joe. She's never done that before. And Cruz starts to ask some questions, but Joe is like, not here. She doesn't trust the environment enough to have that conversation there. And that tells me everything. Joe knows that something is not right. She just doesn't know what it is yet. Here's my prediction. I don't think this season is about Russia or the Ukraine or China. I think this is about Joe realizing that she's being used. For 3 seasons, Joe has believed that she understood the mission. I think she's about to realize that she only understood the assignment. There's a difference. Somebody above her has been moving the chess pieces around, and she's figuring it out now. And that honestly made me wonder, is Caitlin using Joe as an actual lioness for this mission? Has she been using her as a lioness this whole time, when Joe is the one that trains the lioness? I don't know. I feel like that's what's happening here. And if that's what's happening, that will be a big full circle moment. My favorite scene in the whole episode has nothing to do with Ukraine. It's when those 2 quote unquote state police officers showed up at Joe's house in the middle of the night. Joe was sitting on her couch, having a drink, trying to decompress from the day she had, when somebody knocks on the door. She looks at her watch. She's like, who the hell is knocking on my door? So she knows something is not right. She walks over to the door with her hand on her pistol, and she peeks around to see who it is. And then she opens the door, but she has the chain on it. And she cracks it open, and she's like, can I help you? And then the guy's standing there talking about, can you step outside? We're the state police. And I got one look at him, and I was like, you are not state police. You do not look like police officers. The guy looked kind of scraggly, and his suit looked like it was ill-fitting. I was like, you are not police officers. And Joe knew that too. So she kept asking him, what are you doing here? What do you want? I'm not stepping outside. I don't care who you are. Show me some proof. And they couldn't show her any proof. So she kept asking him. And that's when he got mad. And when he got mad, his little accent started popping in. And that's one of the little details that I love about Taylor's writing is normally, normal people, when they get mad, they lose their filter. And so when that guy lost his filter, he's a foreign guy. So he let that accent slip in a little bit. And that's when Joe was definitely like, yeah, you're not a police officer, so get out of here. So she tries to close the door, but he sticks his foot in, and then he breaks open the door. For one split second, he thinks he won because she fell. But, he didn't ask nobody about Joe. And Joe raised that gun and showed us exactly who the fuck she is. She blasted his ass away. And then the guy that was with him, he starts running. So that wasn't no police officer. Like, what police officer is gonna run because his partner gets shot, So Joe ran after him and dropped him too. And then that's when the lights in the house start popping on, and she's like, oh my God, my family, what are they gonna think? I don't want them to see this. And the husband, he runs downstairs. So he runs out onto the porch, and he's looking around at the guys on the floor, on the ground. And he's like, he looks at Joe like, oh my God. And Joe looks at him like, I know this is bad. So she calls it in and says she needs the FBI at her house immediately. And that's how the episode ends. Something in that scene really stood out to me. When Joe goes to the door to see who it is, she doesn't look through the peephole. She takes a look out the window. And that reminded me of a book I'm currently reading by Lee Child called Gone Tomorrow. And that is the story that they use for the TV show Reacher. So this season of Reacher is going to be based on that novel. And I like to see how they adapt a book into either a movie or a TV show. But in the book, Reacher says, as a trained officer, you should never look into the peephole, because the person on the other side, if they're, if they're coming after you and they're trying to kill you, they're going to know that you looked into the peephole when you see that the light behind the peephole goes dark. So that means the person on the other side has looked into the peephole and their head is blocking the light in the room. So that gives the person, the killer on the other side, the opportunity to fire into that peephole and blow your eye out. So he says, don't ever look into the peephole, look out the window. And that's what Joe did. When Joe went to look out the window instead of the peephole, that reminded me of what I had just read in the book. That tells you that writers do their research so their shows and movies look authentic. You can't just be making up stuff and expect an audience to believe what's really happening. That's for sci-fi or fantasy. But in drama, you can't do that. So overall, I loved this episode, this premiere episode. But like I said, not because of the explosions or the drones or the dogs or any of that. I loved it because of all the mystery underneath it. Joe doesn't have the whole picture, her team doesn't, and we as the audience don't either. Taylor Sheridan isn't asking who's going to survive. He's asking who's telling the truth. Right now, I don't trust anybody. Not the CIA, not the Army, and not Caitlin either. Sorry, Caitlin. And I have a feeling that Joe is about to learn that the people she's been working for all this time are going to be the same people she has to fight. And that's going to be a nasty fight. When I saw the trailer for the premiere and all these secrets were going on, and I felt like something is not right here. And I think they are going to get to a nasty truth about what's really going on in America's government. And if that's where the season is headed, we are in for a bumpy ride. That is it. So if you have enjoyed this review, let me know down to the comments. Hit the like button, share the video with somebody you know who likes the show or hasn't even seen the show yet but wants to see it. And let me know, do you think Caitlin is hiding something from Joe, or am I tripping? Am I imagining things? Let me know down in the comments. I'd love to hear your theories. Until next time, I'm Rosalind, and this is WordyGirl Watching. And remember, great television isn't just about what happens, it's about why it happens. See you in the next review.